Tired of being rate shopped? In most cases, you're being shopped because of something you did or didn't do on your discovery call. Leah Zamir and I talk about the importance of going deep on her discovery call and to uncover your client's why and ask better questions that'll help you build stronger relationships and reduce the rate shopping. Why should you listen to Leah? She's a top 1% loan officer with Guild Mortgage based out of Seattle, Washington. And in this market, she's had fantastic results. And so we cover a couple different things. One area we talk about a bit is identifying your ideal client. And then she talks about 4 different examples of these ideal clients and how to get more of them and what you would do if you wanted to focus on getting more of those clients. But the second half or second 2/3 of this conversation, we talk about uncovering your clients' why. It's how it's the secret to reducing rate shopping and help you close more mortgages. And I go into and she gives me 5 questions that she asked during the discovery call that I'm willing to bet most of you are not asking. And at the very end of this, I'm going to break them down for you because we kind of go a little bit, I asked the questions, I'm digging this out, but at the end, I'm going to break them down for you again. I'm going to add 2 questions that I personally think that you should ask on your discovery call if you're not already. Hey, thanks for listening to this. I'm Scott Peckford, your host for I Love Mortgage Brokering. This is the #1 podcast for mortgage brokers and loan officers that want to upscale their business. And I really appreciate that you're listening to this. Thanks again to Leah for coming to chat with me. I love these conversations. I always learn something new. And before I jump into this episode, though, I want to give a shout out to our title sponsor, Finmo. Finmo is a Canadian mortgage application, document collection, submission platform designed specifically for Canadian borrowers. It's very easy for borrowers to use. It's got some really cool features like smart docs. It knows what docs your clients needs based on the application. It's got smart submission notes, pulls key data from the app before you hit submit. And it's connected to Lender Spotlight, which is, frankly, the best tool for searching rates and guidelines. Check them out at lendesk.com/Finmo. And check out this conversation with Leah. Hey, Leah, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Scott.
So can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got in the mortgage business?
Sure. So it started 8 years ago. I'm kind of newer to the market. I was 24 when I bought my first house, and I was living with my ex-husband and his 2 terrible friends. And USAA would not... they were like giving me a hard time, as big banks sometimes do. And so I was complaining at work, and my friend told me to go to this other mortgage broker. So I met him, and I would literally drive to his office like 20 minutes out of my way anytime he asked me for any docs. I'm like, you got to get me out of this house. I got to get into a house without these goons living with me. And so he thought I was hilarious. We talked all the time. I had like 1 million poker winnings in all my bank statements that we had to take out. And so we had to get crafty with the purchase. And he ended up offering me a job at the end, saying that he'd pay me more than I made at my last W-2. So I said, how could I say no to that? I said, yes.
Right. Okay. There's so many questions I have about this whole thing. You got the goons you're living with, which is kind of hilarious. So that's cool. Why was this guy getting you
24 then, or 20?
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. But like, how does this guy, even 8 years ago, how is he not having you send him stuff that's not in person?
Oh, he was telling me to email him, but I was so scarred from USAA.
I see. You just
I just want to have this doc. I need you to close this loan.
I see. So it turned into and then, okay, what about this poker winnings? What do you mean? Like, did you actually, are you joking, or is it just, did you actually make money from poker? I
do love poker. It's my side hustle, and it's always been, obviously as I get older, the earnings go a little, the game that I play is bigger, but yeah, I play poker since I was
let's just, this is just human interest for me now. So like back when you're 24, like how much money were you making from playing poker?
That's a fair question. Yeah, no, to me that was like a lot of money, but back then it was like $600 to $1,000 a month.
I see.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Well, yeah, it would have been back before if you depending on what you're doing. So
yeah, that
was
like
you're even winning
10% growth in what I was making.
Right.
Not to give too much information, but.
But so you're a poker player as well as a loan officer. So, okay. When we had chatted before, a couple of things that you're really good at. One of them is just being really efficient with your clients and also just identifying an avatar. So an ideal client, and then helping them, trying to attract more of them. So you do some coaching with Guild. And so you're a coach, you're top 1% loan officer, and which is a hat tip within 8 years of doing that. Fantastic. Good for you from, doing it so quickly. But if you have somebody that you're working with and you're coaching them and they're trying to help them identify their ideal client, how do you do that? And we'll talk about what to do with it once you've identified it. Let's do that part first.
Yeah. So it's really easy because you just go like, let's let's be honest with each other. Like, who's your favorite client to work with? And like, if you're new to the business, a lot of people will say like, oh, first time home buyers. It's like, and if you're a little more seasoned, then maybe repeat clients. For me, like, I love the numbers aspect of it. So I love talking to like investors. It like really gets me excited to have a confusing or complicated loan scenario, because those are like clients for life if you can actually figure them out. My favorite I go, what's your favorite compliment to receive? And it's like, if they're like, just, oh, you changed my life, you got me my first home. Or like, for me, it's a guy telling me, wow, you're the most competent person I talked to all week. I'd be like, yay.
Right. That's cool. Okay. So you basically help them. What's your favorite client? So then
Mhm.
can you give me examples of when somebody says, this is my favorite client, but then when you actually look under the hood, you're like, wait a second, you're not even aiming at that. It's like
Yeah.
you're going in the wrong direction.
Well, my two favorite examples is when I found this out, that like a lot of people just aren't building their business for the business they want. They're building like a sporadic business with no intention. It was like this one, I was coaching four guys, and one of them said his favorite clients were tech clients, like 20% down, engineers. And the other one said repeat clients. So those are two like great examples. And so when I dove deeper, the repeat clients was great. I go, okay, so how are you staying in contact with your previous clients? Oh, well, like, and then he just had this crazy answer, pretty much nothing, right? It's like nothing was built into his business to keep in communication with them. It's a huge hole. It's a huge hole for like enjoyment in your business too, right? Like if you're liking what you do, like I think Dalai Lama said it, you never have to work a day in your life.
Right. Okay. So you basically, they were like, hey, I'm saying one thing, but not another. So then how would you if I was that person, how would you coach me? What would be your suggestions on if I said I wanted a certain client type for me? Like what would be the activities or the changes that you'd make?
Well, then we'd filter it in and be like, okay, what does that client want? Like how would you entice that client? What are some activities you could do to get more of that client? And then also like, not that we want to treat anybody different, but if you have a client that you really like have had fun working with, it's okay to spend more time with them. It's like gives you joy in your life. So how can you build more rapport with that type of individual and
Right.
ask for
Can you
more
think of
business?
specifics that some of your people have used so that again it makes, because sometimes people listening are like, okay, I like the idea of this, but like I only need you to dumb it down. Tell me like I'm 10. Like I always
Yeah.
say, like
So if you
dumb it
like,
right down for
let's
me.
go through all the three examples that I threw out. So like, or four, right? We have first time home buyers. So if you love working with first time home buyers, how many first time home buyer programs do you know in your area? How many first time home buyer programs do you know in the states you're licensed in? How many first time home buyer classes are you teaching? Is that where your business is built around? Is your meeting with your clients focused around just teaching them the basics of mortgage? Number two would be like past clients. Okay. How often are you having those touch points? I think Keller Williams says to have like 36 touch points to your previous clients. So like how many of those do you have? If you only have two or three, that's not really good, right? Like, I mean, think about how many emails you get from Michael. And I still don't unsubscribe because I'm waiting for that like framing deal. Like,
Right. You to get the exact one, because I'm on, there's a couple that I'm on and I don't unsubscribe, even though, but every once in a while I'll be like, bang, I bought something.
yeah, that's the shirt I've been looking for, right? Like, so
Right.
if you're not
How did you
even
know it was
close to
shirts?
that, because I have many relations with men. No, not a lot of men, but my boyfriend.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
And then, what was the other ones? Oh, investors, right? So like I target a lot of commercial real estate agents to like pick up their residential stuff. I talk to, I teach investor classes a couple times a year. I have my name floating around in a couple chats that I know that like are investor groups that are really big in my area. And then the last one was like tech clients. It's like all these companies are coming out with cool softwares to help you be efficient. And if you're not, obviously we can't be the caliber of like Amazon and Microsoft, but like you need to be using the tech. You need to at least be sending calendar reminders, sending professional emails, like all that stuff you should do that anyways. But if you're really trying to get in with the engineer crowd, they're big number crunchers. They respect people that respect their time, things like that.
And they exactly, and use technology where they would like to use technology that's smooth and efficient and not clunky or old.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So that makes sense. So basically you'd say, okay, first step would be to identify your favorite clients. Next step is start asking questions about where can I find them? Who already, so where can I find them would be one question, but the second one might be like, who already is working with them? So the commercial realtors is one example,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, and then another one would be like, well, then how do I get in front of more of them? So that could be classes. It could be like, different things. And so, is there any other advice you'd have for somebody who's trying to niche into like a specific avatar that you think would be helpful?
That's a tough one on the spot. I guess like think about what, we've been for, especially if you've been doing this for years, you have a big client base. So think about one, who you last helped that was like that. And then how could you edit your business to be more like that? And it might not happen instantaneously, but it's like figure out where your potholes are for the business you want, not the business you have.
Right. I like how you said that edit your business for the business you want. I've never heard it framed that way. One of the things you told me too is that you're really big on understanding your client's why. So explain that to me, and then I'm going to get into the weeds of like how you do that. So like why, quote unquote, why is that important for you to understand their why?
Well, I mean, again, it makes my job so much more enjoyable. Like, it's so easy to just be like a Redfin calculator and send out numbers all the time. But like, how are you being better than the computer? Like, why even meet with you if not to learn something new or like better themselves in this meeting? Like, you're all professionals in your field. We all have fiduciary licenses. Like, you should be pushing that. And before you can just push an agenda on someone, you need to know the why. Like, client I just had, she needed to buy a house before her mom died. That was her mom's like literal dying wish, right? And so
Yeah.
if I know that's your why, like, it just gives me more reason to push harder for them. If we get pushed to work on nights and weekends sometimes. If you end up having that, you're less grateful, right? Like, oh my God, this person needs me and needs me because of this why. So I
Right.
think everyone has an underarching why that they're not necessarily telling you in their email or their text. So I literally ask, why is it important that you buy this house?
Okay, so give me some examples of things people have said to you that have surprised you. One of them, my mom is dying and she said she wants me to own a house, but what are some other things that you've picked up from having this natural, wiring that you have?
Yeah, one would be like, oh, well, I want to be financially free by the time I'm this. And that creates a really fun conversation for me because I go, okay, well, do you know like how leverage debt works? Do you know like, how you can use these mechanisms to your benefit? And then, I always reference like, this is mortgage 101, but we'll have 201 next purchase, right? So
Right.
that they kind of create this establishment of like, I understand what they're doing and
You're
my
also
why.
assuming there, by the way, sort of cut you off, but you're assuming there's going to be a 201 and a 301. And so like there's a bit of an NLP, you know, uh,
Yeah.
programming happening there with that. I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah. And then, if that's their goal is to be financially free, they're probably hoping maybe to buy their multiple houses. And then I can also talk to them about maybe we don't buy at the top of your price point at that point. Maybe you look to have a better debt to income ratio. So it's like understanding your why makes you an advisor less than just like a generated computer sending numbers to people.
Right. Okay. Can you think of some others? So there's I want to be
Mm-hmm.
free. My mom wants me to buy a place. Is there anything else you can think of?
Oh, some of the really simple, like, because I don't want to rent. Well, why don't you want to rent? Well, because I want a dog, okay, well then a yard's important. These are things real estate agents should be asking too, by the way.
Right.
Then they
But
help them.
really the why is I want a dog. So like, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, they want to own their own place, but like the problem with their current situation is they can't have a dog. And so then
Yeah.
it's like, so that's really interesting.
I had another one. I did one of the ones I talked out of buying. He wants to buy in the Bay Area for like $3 million. And the mortgage was going to be like, I think it was 24 grand. Rent for the nicest house on the block was 15 grand. And his why is like, he wants to have a steady place for his family. But his why, because I've worked with him like 3 or 4 times, is to like have a lot of real estate investing to like maybe move back to his homeland. And I'm like, well, doesn't really make sense. You could keep 10 grand in the bank every month investing, not put 600,000, and that money would get far more money than the housing market in the stock market. So for him, his why wasn't aligning with his purchase. And then it saves me a bunch of hard work and time to be like, this isn't going to work. It doesn't
Right.
make sense for your why.
Well, actually, this is something that ties into the next thing I want to ask you about. So basically understanding their why helps you know how to solve them. And then I like what you said. you don't want to be a Redfin calculator, right? Like you're not just giving them numbers. It's actually there's a reason behind the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then on top of that though, you said to me, and I asked in the pre thing, was like, what would Leah do? And it's like, so talk to me about that, this philosophy. It's something I used to do when I don't broker anymore. I run a brokerage, but I'm curious about how, because obviously there's a pretty good, what was the commission that you gave up on that transaction by telling that guy no? And then tie that into your WWLD. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course there's a daily commission, but like he's been a client of mine forever. He's going to continue to be a client. If he ends up buying another state, he'd probably be like patient for me to get licensed in it. So I don't look at like the now. I look at like how much business am I generating? If you get greedy, what do they call it? It's like not an abundance mindset. It's just like, a scarcity mindset. Like if I needed that commission and I'm giving advice based on that commission, that's like a roller coaster. It was like the beginning of this year, I was shocked. I barely got shopped for the first 4 months. And then all of a sudden I got shopped once and my mindset changed. And all of a sudden I'm getting shopped every time. And I'm like, probably there's something going on that makes me seem more thirsty. So like, I think we're in the big mindset business. And I think giving like good karma out, I get my woo woos on, but like getting good karma out, then you receive it. It's like really important. So when I look at it, like what would Leah do if I know their why, like I have to, get in there. I have to empathize and know what their why is to be like, well, if it was my money, I wouldn't just buy a house to buy a house. But if their why is, hey, I want to be in a house by the time I'm 30 and that's financial success to me, then I go, okay, well, that's my why. And then I go like, would you rather, what location, is location more important to you or is space? Like, what are we looking for and where can I approve you at? And what loan products can we use? And what would be the best funds of using my money? A good example, sorry for like spewing, but this guy, engineers, right? I just bring them up all the time because I'm blessed in Seattle and that's all we have. It's like,
yeah, everybody's an engineer or an Uber driver, but yeah.
So he's got this crazy spreadsheet that he's worked out on his own about his ROI on buying a house or leaving the money in the market and putting 20%. I told him from the beginning, I'm not a big fan of putting a ton of money down, but now more than ever, it can make a little more sense because of interest rates. And he goes, I don't believe that, whatever. So he does this crazy spreadsheet and he finds out that putting 20% down has he could have made more money in the stock market. And so then he comes to me like towards the end, he goes, I think I want to put the bare minimum down out of his own accord. I'm like, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, I know. But it took him to get there. And so what Leah do there, it ends up working out. Like here's my advice. Here's what I would do. But I'm happy to restructure the loan in any way, shape, or form.
Right. But you're not being an order taker, you're being a consultant.
Yes.
Digs into the actual what's going on. And so can you think of another example of I got to ask that file that you were talking about, the $3 million purchase, whatever. Mm-hmm. So what would approximate commission range be on something like that? I mean, it can depend on product and everything, but like give me a range. Just so I want to have an idea of how much money you just said no to because you thought about your client's needs and not yours.
Yeah, let's say around 10 grand. We'll just say
right. So basically $10,000 that you could have made, but you knew that, hey, if this was me, I wouldn't do it. Like based on what you said is important to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's fantastic. And probably part of the reason you've had the success is because you're actually that's not something everyone does.
Yeah, and I mean, eventually he ended up going and making an offer on a house, but then he said, this didn't work out. I think we're going to rethink about it for a while. But then he'll come to me eventually knowing it's a trusting space.
Right.
So.
Yeah, some of my best referral partners and clients are people that I told no or told them what the opposite of what they're expecting to hear. And then you actually build more trust.
Always.
So I think that's really good. Is there anything like in terms of, so once you understand the why, is there anything else that you do with that? Is there like any ways that you weave that into your conversation? One of the things that I used to do, and maybe this is that when I have a client that's stressed out and I understood their why was like you said, to have the backyard. I'd be like, hey, I know right now we're going to get there. This is stressful at the moment, but I want you to picture yourself sitting in your backyard, drinking a glass of wine. And so I would do this whole vision picture painting of them being in the outcome they want so that it would, it didn't take away all the stress, but it helped them see there was purpose in the current pain. You've done anything like that?
Yeah. Visualize. I was going to say that you took the words out of my mouth. Visualization is really good. In sales, like one of the key terms I learned when I was first in sales training a long time ago was like, you told me this, so X. And
Right.
like you use it too when people are talking about like, oh, this bank is offering me a way lower rate for 3 basis or 3 points. You're like, well, you told me you didn't want a lot of closing costs and you didn't care as much about rates. So this is why I structure the deal this way. So
Right.
you told me X, so Y is this. And that helps a lot when you go Y.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. And so any other ways that you apply under getting deep on the, and is that something you do on the first call, or when do you uncover that?
Yeah. So a lot of times, like I have like a mortgage planning meeting and a lot of people take the application during that time. I never do. I think the application is so dry and so boring and I want them to get used to my tech too. So the only time I'll ever take a application over the phone or over Zoom is if they're like, can't use the computer, can't figure out how, or there's some sort of problem. So my whole meeting when I first meet with them is about their why and teaching them something that goes along with that.
Okay, so actually, I'm gonna dive into this as a kind of side. This is like a side quest. This is a video game. We just saw a side quest that we're gonna follow. So I call that a discovery call. You call it a mortgage application meeting. Is that what you call it? What do you call that first call?
Oh, I don't have a cool name for it. I just like my
Okay,
my mortgage.
so whatever we
meeting.
call it doesn't matter. The point
I
is
like
that first conversation, whatever that is. Can you give me some questions that you always ask that you think like that more people should ask on the discovery call? I mean, there's the obvious ones. What do you do? But what would be some of the questions that you feel like people should be asking if you're coaching a younger version of you that was taking over your business? What would you want them to be asking in that meeting?
I always ask like clockwork every time, and this is such a game changer for being shopped and teaching people how to like talk about money is, has any loan officer ever showed you how interest rates work? Do you want to see? And so I've never had, the only thing I've ever had someone say is, yeah, I know mostly, but sure, show me what you're going to show me. Like they're always open to learn that information. That's like what's behind door number one. But why it's important, especially, what we just experienced in April. I don't know when this podcast comes out, but it's like that was a terrible month in terms of rates, right? Getting worse and worse and worse. And so if you explain to them, this is what interest rates look like, this is how they work, this is where, we're at the rates that we saw in November, like chances are in a week or two, your rates will be better. So reach out to me and we can reprice things. Like it creates a more transparent situation. And most of your clients don't really understand how interest rates are. And it's that confusion that gets them like Googling things and looking things up on the internet.
Right. So just so I'm reading through the lines, because I'm in Canada and it's a little different where you guys are in terms of how pricing works. That's okay. But I'm gonna dumb this right down as much as I can. So if I can understand it, then hopefully my listeners can. So you're essentially saying to them the price that you're giving them today may change based on like how much it changed in the month of April. So then like basically check with me. You're not saying like, hey, this is a set in stone pricing because it could be different in 3 weeks or a month.
Now, in Canada, do you lock a rate when you have pre-approval?
We do pre-approvals, and they'll go up to, depending on the lender, 90 to 120 days. But often the shorter term money is cheaper though. Like you said, like if you lock for do a pre-approval for 120 days, there's often specials that not always, but you can actually sometimes get a better pricing if it's, there's a pre-approval pricing and then there's a live deal pricing. So there can be two different. So that's the difference.
And what's your rate based on? Like, so ours is based on the 30-year mortgage bond.
It depends on the term. So we have anywhere from 1 to 5 year terms. Although right now 3 year terms, 2 to 3 year terms seem to be more popular. Historically in Canada, 5 year terms are everybody goes 5 year term.
But you could probably show them like a daily matrix of where the rates have been and going. Yeah. So I just literally pull up like our MBS, which is like our mortgage bond, and I show them what rates have been up to. I also like show them what 2022 looked like, what 2023 looked like on a high overview, and then what we're experiencing now. And it just teaches them a little bit of information, but most importantly, it lets them know because great examples, I pre-approved someone 2 weeks ago in the States and they went to go get another pre-approval with the bank and not talk to me. Their rate's going to look a lot better because the mortgage bond had a lot of healing in the last week and a half. But I want them to know my rate also got better. So don't just blindly shop me and let me live in the dust.
And the other thing that's happening, if I can observe on this, is that by you explaining something that they don't know, it makes them realize there's a lot that they don't know. Because people think they know, they actually have no clue, right? Like if I got into, anything, I know mortgages, but I don't know, I wouldn't know how real estate agents really work. I kind of have an idea about like financial planning and stuff. And so you're creating a gap, and they're going, oh shoot, you actually know a lot more about this than me. Maybe I should just get you to help me. That's the I can see that being the internal dialogue when you take the time to educate them in that first conversation.
Yeah, right? Like on what I look at too in my business is because sometimes I have clients that like message me so much more than other clients. And then I go, what did I do early on to not build enough trust with this person that they're not just trusting me at this point, like towards the end of the transaction, and I'm still getting texts and calls all the time. And there's usually an answer to that, but you have to be pretty good at like, again, critiquing your business and looking and going, okay, what's the business I want?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So back to the question. See, I think I got ADD, but I can't stay on track when I'm doing these things.
Good. I'm
so
pregnant.
I said to you that the initial call, the discovery call, the initial meeting, what you said, you'd want them to ask the question, do you know how interest rates work? And everybody show you. And I love the fact that you said, instead of just saying, you're actually now also highlighting the fact that no one else has done this. So so it's,
I like to attach my little low key.
Yeah. So there's a little NLP there too. It's like, hey, has anyone else showed you this? Oh, so you're creating some doubt in their mind. Like, why hasn't anybody showed me this? This should be something that, there's a bit of doubt inducing. Is there any other questions that you think are important or things that you talk about in that initial call that you think are helpful?
I mean, I go through a lot of, I'm trying to think of unique things, right? Because I hope that everyone's asking, like, where's your money coming from? Like, where's your W-2? Sometimes I do ask, like, is there anything you heard about from friends or anything that's making you nervous? Basically, like, my goal is how many open-ended questions can I get? I'm sure everyone's heard of like the 80-20 rule. Like, you should be talking 20% of the time. Your client or whoever you're selling should be talking 80% of the time. And so early on in any of my sales positions, I always think like, did I give myself an A+ at that? Or was I talking too much? Or like, did the person get to share their story, with me?
And then when do you ask, okay, I like that. But I think that's a great question. Anything you heard about from friends that is making you nervous, because then you can uncover some potential objections or challenges that if you don't ask that question, you won't even know.
Yeah.
So what kind of answers have you got from that? Again, I like getting to practical. So when you've asked a question like that, can you think of any answers that people may have said to you that were like, yeah, I'm glad you told me, because now I can
I mean, the first one that comes up is like, oh, so a lot of them are like, oh, that, this came up in inspection or something like, oh, they had like a $20,000 sewer repair or something. You go, okay, well, it's really important you do a sewer scope, and your agent will walk you through that. And that's good that you asked that question. The other thing that's really important is to like affirm that they've done a good job when they've asked you something. I think that really helps build trust. Like, what a great question. Thank you for asking. Because you want them to feel safe to ask you of all things. But the other question, like, oh, that it's really stressful to buy a house, and that like, it's like a lot of paperwork. Those are really common ones. And I go, it's another kind of a low dig. It's like, well, it's only stressful if you make it stressful. If you have a really good team that you trust, it can be really fun. And that's actually where I reiterate, this process should be fun. Whether it's your first house, your second house, your third house, there are stressful things intrinsically with buying a house, but you should be excited about spending $500,000 to $1 million. Like, it shouldn't be something that you hate doing.
Right.
And so I go, that's very important. And if you have the right people, you're working with a full-time agent, you're working with a really good lender, it can be fun. It can be fun.
Right. So that's future facing a little bit there, and also they're letting them know. So I like what you said there. What a great question. It makes them feel safe, but it also makes them feel smart.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like, what a great question. I wish more of my clients would ask that.
You
could say, and then you go in and then you explain it, edify them, and then come back to the thing. And then, so is there any other things that you'd ask in that meeting? I'm going to ask about how you ask about the why next, but anything else before I ask you about how you get to my why? So if I'm your customer, that you think would be I want you to put on the hat of your coaching. I'm your brand new, except I'm way younger than I am. I'm 25. And I'm going to come work for you, and I'm going to work with your clients. And you're like, Scott, I want you to do it this way.
I don't age discriminate, Scott. You can work for me. You can leave your brokerage and come work for me anytime. I don't know of any. I mean, sometimes I'll ask like, who will be living there? Those are questions that aren't necessarily in the application. Have you ever had experience buying before? That's an important one, because maybe they bought 10 years ago, or during the last crash, and they had a terrible bankruptcy foreclosure story. And getting them to be, share with you, that helps. And then as for the why question, I mean, I usually ask that first. That's to start off. Like, I want them to feel like, tell me why they're even here. Why are you even seeking my attention? Like, why am I here to listen to you? Like, that's
right.
the first question I usually ask.
And then do you ask follow-up questions? Like I got to think when they say something, because sometimes the surface answer is actually just the surface answer. This has been my experience. And so how do you, if you suspect there's actually, or do you just go like, okay, one pass through? I'm curious.
No, a lot of times they usually do give you, that's a great question. They usually give you the liminal, like,
oh, thank you for edifying me and making me feel smart.
Part of my nature.
See, we're actually doing some, this is like meta stuff here we're doing.
Exactly. Are we even in this meeting? So they, what are you buying a house? They go, it's my first house. Everyone told me I should buy it. Oh, like who told you should buy it? Is there any?
That's a good question because like who's in their ear that you either can affirm or you can re-educate if there's bad information coming in, right?
Dads and moms. No.
Right.
And I usually would ask like how many houses do they own? Are they investors or are they like they bought their house, they lived there for 30 years? And that's really important to understand that difference too, because if you have an investor dad or an investor mom, they're going to be interested in a lot different numbers than the mom that's going to say, oh, I bought my house, I lived in it for 30 years. You need to put 20% down. You need to pay off your mortgage as fast as possible. Like you need to, that mom or dad that's bought and lived in the same house forever, they might be different than your client. And it's important to understand, is this going to be the same type of client or that? I haven't in my career seen anyone buy a forever house, but that's my experience.
They're out there somewhere, like a unicorn that exists that no one's seen. And it's like, yes, I guess it does happen, but you're right. Like, but the other thing that you do, here's the thing I just realized when you say that, what I like about that question is that if they're getting input from their parent and their parents only own 2 houses, you own a bunch and you've also helped probably hundreds or thousands of people with it. So it actually creates a little bit of like, oh, wait, actually, they're not as knowledgeable. Like somebody who's owned 3 houses is not the same as somebody who's done this hundreds of times, right?
Exactly. And how you want to talk around that might depend on your relationship with your client. But like, I would never come out and be like, well, I know more because
no. But you can do it in a very subtle, a careful, subtle way where they realize it without you in any way putting them down. But all you're doing is sometimes you're just creating a little bit of doubt. I like doubt-inducing questions.
I do
because doubt-inducing questions make people go, you need to help me because I thought I knew everything. Now I'm a bit confused, but I'm okay because I trust you and I want you to help me.
Well, we live in an internet world where there's just so much information. It's based solely around whatever you search for. So like you're always getting ego strokes when you're Googling things. And it's important, I think, to be challenged a little bit. And that's actually something I do add in my meetings. I go, if you've thought of one new thing by the end of this meeting, I've done my job. I'm excited. And so you can depending on who it is, I try and touch that base too. So I'm like, I want you to have learned something from talking to me. Like, obviously I've learned something about you, but I want you to come out of this meeting thinking in a different way or understanding money a little more.
Right. What I like about that, so you said at the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's a priming question that basically makes them pay attention to your conversation, and then it shows that it makes you stand out. I think it's a great question to ask or a great statement to make. Thanks. I want you to leave with at least one thing you didn't know before. It's like, oh, I actually got 3. Like that was amazing. And you're setting an expectation. There's a whole bunch of reasons why that's a great frame to apply to a discovery call, however you call it.
Yeah. And if you want to be even better than me, you could even like forward them an email or an article about whatever the heck they were most interested in. But I don't think I'll.
No, who's got time for that? Okay. That's just like, let's not get crazy here, Leah. Like,
I don't know. You're 25. You're just starting in the industry.
Exactly. I got bills to pay. Biden didn't pay off my student loan. I'm just kidding. I don't even know if that's.
I don't think you paid off anyone's yet.
I heard that it's coming, or they're talking about it. I try not to pay attention to the news. It just makes me sad and angry, and I can't do anything about it. Okay, is there any other questions you think I should have asked? This has been really fun, by the way, and thanks for being good sport and let me just go wherever the heck I felt like going with this. But anything else I should have asked that you think would be helpful?
I mean, this market's nuts. 2024. I think, I just feel like I want to like end on like an advice point, like. All my woo-woo comes back. It's like, just have a good attitude. Wake up in the morning. But
listen, I actually think that's important. Like so at our brokerage, we do mindset calls every week. We got mindset coaches for our agents. Kind of like, remember the movie Billions? We've got people that they can book calls with. And we also do a group mindset call because it's 80% mindset. Like, honestly, like there's 20% technical. And if you don't have it, you're really hooped. But if you don't get the mindset down, no amount of technical knowledge is going to be any good to you.
And there's a space for being super technical. Like that's where I love and live and breathe. But there's plenty of mortgage lenders I meet that like know nothing technical. They're just great salespeople and they are great with clients. But I think mindset, I mean, in this market, it's a tough economy. Canada, you guys are always having a good time, but like,
oh, no. We're like, no, we're not. Like we were having our challenges too. I heard one time, so when the elections and stuff were happening, I saw a post once on social media, and it's like, Canada must feel like they're in an apartment living above a meth lab because it was so crazy in the US. I'm like, that's kind of funny.
I saw that too. And then they're like our Narnia, like there's like safe little world up there. I think like, agents especially, if you made it through last year, you're doing amazing. And then agents now and clients, they just are, we're all, like you said, you don't watch the news. I even hate watching economic news, but that's the one I have to kind of do. But it's like, if you're just being another naysayer, you're really not standing out. Like, nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be around a poo-poo party.
No, you gotta, if you bring good energy. I met somebody the other day and I was like, man, I just want to hang around with you. They're so, just like, that's the kind of people I want to be with. So anyway, Leah, where can people find you online?
So I have my Instagram at Shebrew, like Hebrew with an S. And then I have a Facebook, but I'm not on it as much. I'm actually not a big social media guru.
That's okay. Just be present, be real. Thank you so much for chatting with me, Leah. And thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks again for listening. And I'm going to just break down for you now the questions that Leah had covered in this episode to make it a little simpler for you. And then I'm going to add some to it as well. So the first question that Leah asked was kind of the why question. So why are we here today? Now, you don't have to say it that way, but like the idea is to get clear on the why. And one of the things about asking about somebody's why is that often there is another layer below it. And so there's this great exercise called 7 Levels Deep, where you basically ask the same question why 7 times. And when you do, you realize there's actually, my answers are surface, and there's actually a deeper, and the closer you get to the real why, the more emotional it is, the more motivating it is. And so it's really important that as a mortgage broker, and I like how Leah said, don't be a Redfin calculator. We're not just taking data and running numbers and saying, here's your options. It's like, we got to understand the person's needs and goals and dreams, and then make sure that the mortgage product that we get them or we recommend matches that. And it just makes it so much more powerful. So I would encourage you guys to think about making sure you get to the why. Another thing that she asked was, has any loan officer, mortgage broker, whatever you want to use the correct term in there for you, wherever you are, showed you how interest rates work? So this is a great open-ended question that tees her up to basically demonstrate her deep knowledge that they don't have. And it does 2 things. It shows a deficiency because most of the time people don't do this. So then it makes the other people look bad and like they know what they're doing. And secondly, it shows you have a really deep understanding of this. And a lot of cases in their mind, without you even saying it, they're going to say, wow, because they come in with this idea that they know more than they do. And they don't, frankly. And then you make them realize there's a gap between what they think they know and what they actually know. And then a lot of times they're like, look, just tell me what to do. That's what I want you to, you obviously know more about this than me. That's what they're going to say. So the third question is, have you heard anything from your friends that's making you nervous? This is a great question in this market because there's a lot of misinformation and confusion and fear. And so if you can get ahead of this, right, if you want your clients to not go out and write offers and then back out at the last minute, you got to do a little bit more digging. And I like that she asked this question so that she can start to get in front of those objections and just help. But the great part about Leah, which I really liked, was that she also has the frame around this whole thing. It's not about manipulating people. It's about, what would Leah do? So in her case, if it's not a good idea, she's going to say, don't do it, even if it means sending away a $10,000 commission check, which, by the way, is not something that everybody would do. But I think part of the reason she's successful is that she's thinking long-term and taking care of her clients. Side note there. So anything, basically, the idea there is to get clear on any fears or uncertainties they have. I like the question, who will be living there? It's a bit more general, but sometimes there's like, oh, I'm also bringing this person and that person, but they're not going on the mortgage. It's a more general question, but I think that's good. Another one was, have you experienced buying before? That was a great question. I thought that because it gives you an idea, a framework for what the other person is or isn't doing. And asking about parents, like the parents, if there's someone else involved, like how many homes do they own? And so you get a sense of, are these sophisticated parents? Are they people that are not sophisticated? And so it can allow you to tailor your messaging and communication more accurately. two other things that I like to say. One is like, how did you hear about us? So that, which is pretty obvious or pretty basic, but people do skip it. How did you hear about us? And the second follow-up question to that is, what did they say? So when I ask you, how did you hear about us? And they say, oh, I got referred to you by my friend Steve. Oh, what did they say about me? Well, Steve said that you're da 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 da. Now I know what that's motivated them enough to reach out. And and I learned this from Peter Matheny. He does a great job of in his discovery calls. The reason Steve introduced you to us is because, so when he's doing his reframing at the end and explaining the next steps and what he's going to do, he's actually going to be using that. Hey, remember, the reason Steve introduced you to us is because you said you wanted to do X, Y, Z based on your why and what you're looking to do. This is what we need to do. The next steps are, and then they go, oh, you take away all my stress. I feel like I'm in the right place, and it will help you close more files. And then another question is that you can ask is about like timing. I think sometimes people skip this, is that especially in this market, is be like, if you found the perfect house today, are you ready to buy it today? So if you could find the perfect, and they say, oh, no, not yet. I got to get some money from my parents. I got to pay off some debt. And so the reason you want to ask about timing is, and it may be true that they can't buy right now. It may be not true. But the point is that you can have a lot of people that will talk to you on the phone. You send them links for your application. They don't fill them out. Like, what happened to them? They were basically just doing some information gathering, and they're not actually even ready to buy yet. But you didn't even ask the question about timing, saying, hey, so if you could find the perfect property. So maybe here's how I'd frame this. If you could find the perfect property, what would it look like? They're going to explain it. And I'm going to say, hey, if you could find that tomorrow, and if we could qualify you, would you buy it? And they're going to say yes, or they're going to say no. The answer to that question matters a lot, actually. It does really affect the timing. And so that's why I want to ask that question, because it helps me determine what my follow-up strategy is with them. Maybe there's some blocks that I can help them uncover, but don't assume that they're ready to buy right now if you don't ask. So let's just come to the question. There's a lot more to this. Like, I think that the discovery call is actually a super important conversation. One of the things that that we have built out in our brokerage is training on discovery calls, because we realize getting leads is only the first part problem. The second problem is, where do I act? What do I say to them? And if you don't do a good job of that, then it turns into all kinds of problems for you, and you can get leads and not closings. And that sucks. So hopefully you find that helpful. If you found this useful, please share it with someone, send Leah a message, say, Leah, that was great. If you didn't like something, send it to me. I can handle that. But if you did like it, send Leah a message. I think she'd appreciate it. Thank you again, Leah, for coming to chat with me. And as I always say, thanks for listening to the Mortgage Brokering Podcast. There's no problem in your mortgage business that someone else hasn't already solved. Your problem or your challenge is, who's got the answer on the test? The answers are out there. You just have to go find them. Thanks for listening, and I will see you on the next